Okay, today on the bench we have a true classic, and not only is it a classic, it is a boat anchor. I think this is probably, if you look up the definition of boat anchor in the dictionary, there'll be a picture of a Heathkit Mohawk. These things weigh, I think, 51 or 52 pounds, I think, as you see it. Shipping weight was, like 65 or so pounds. But yeah, I think these are around like 51, 52 pounds as pictured. Really, really heavy radios. This one was sent in to get restored. Does have some problems. It does have a few cosmetic flaws. Top cover's got some paint dings and scratches. Probably just best to, because it's not that bad overall. It looks pretty good. So this is one of those cases where, what do you do? Do you want to repaint it and destroy the originality, or leave the few minor imperfections and it's then original, but still looks good? And I think that the cover is, a lot of this brownness should clean up. That's just dirt stuck in a lot of the perforated holes. So I think cleanup is probably just the best idea here. Even some of the little black marks, I'll probably be able to get most of those rubbed out. So the cover should actually turn out pretty nice. The faceplate looks really good, with one exception. What the heck happened down here? I don't know what happened in that corner. It apparently, maybe it was out of the cabinet, and I don't want to say it got dropped, because as heavy as these things are, it would have crushed the faceplate if it got dropped on that corner. But the cabinet's fine, but it appears that it apparently got bent at one time, and because there's some pounding marks on there. Oh God, they almost look like chisel marks, like somebody, I don't know, tried to straighten it out. But yeah, not a lot we can do for, I mean, I can. And that's the problem, even trying to color match a little bit of paint just for the corner. I might try and mix up a little bit of paint. I guess it would be better than the bare metal there. But yeah, overall, as a general looks quality go, it looks good. Don't look at the bottom corner, everything looks pretty good. Knobs aren't too badly pitted. There is a little bit of pitting to the knobs. They should clean up pretty good. I am absolutely not going to plug this in anything tube type. I never, actually, honestly, even most solid state stuff, if it's vintage, I won't even plug it in before taking it out of the cabinet. But something like this, definitely, and I recommend to people, when you buy something like this, be it a receiver, a transmitter, an old AM radio, shortwave radio, CB, I don't care what it is, old television, do not plug it in. If it's unknown to you, you bought it used. Now, if you bought it off your best friend or something and you know it works, you've been over to his house, or the person that's selling you the product will show you that it works, and you feel confident that it's probably fine, then okay. But yeah, otherwise, never ever plug in anything like this. You stand a really good chance of letting magic smoke out, because Lord knows what might have been done to it. Lord knows there could be exposed wires, there could be fire hazard, shock hazard. You might touch the metal and end up on the floor, and worst case scenario, never get back up. So yeah, you always want to pull them out of the cabinet and inspect them first. This one, it's going to need some help. This control is really, really stiff at the outer edges. This one's kind of stiff through all, but it feels okay. I think that just needs a little bit of cleaning up for the notch tune. That one's okay. Calibrate doesn't feel bad. Antenna tuning stiff, but that one usually is. It needs a screw, because somebody's got a set screw, and this thing's about 3 times too long. Start over here. That feels okay. Feels good. That one gets a little stiff, so yeah, it's probably just, and most of these controls, especially potentiometers, if they feel stiff while you're turning them, there's no hard resistance, but they feel stiff, you have to remember where the shaft goes into the collar, basically, that has the nut that holds it on the faceplate, there's grease in there. Over the decades, that grease dries out and it gets hard as a rock. So don't get discouraged when you turn up all the potentiometers on an old item and they're all stiff. Usually you spray some cleaner in there a couple times, get them flushed out, rotate them back and forth, apply a little bit of fresh oil to it. They'll free up okay, but yeah, they're a little bit stiff, but they feel good. IFG feels good. Selector feels okay. That feels, it's stiff, but feels pretty good. How well that shows up. Definitely has been sitting with, get a flashlight here, with the dial. This has been, woo, yeah, you can't even read that. That's actually the CB band right there, the 11 meter band. That apparently was facing straight up. So over the decades, all of the dirt has landed on that. Yeah, all the numbers are still there, but yeah, you can see this is, you can see the dirt line right there, so that was close to the edge. But yeah, that was definitely right straight up, probably either there, yeah, I'd have to say there, that's the dirtiest. So it was probably sitting about like, probably like that actually. That's probably the orientation it's been sitting for a few decades. This control, yeah, this one we've got some problems here, I know, because it gets really, really stiff before I get, let me zoom back out. Gets really stiff before I get to the end. I don't want to turn this too fast because this does have problems. Turns okay. It's spring loaded, you can see. It has automatic return, and yeah, you get to a point and you hear that, it gets to a ratcheting point. So yeah, we definitely have problems in the tuning dial. So yeah, and see it's even down farther now. So yeah, I don't want to go turning that anymore. All of these switches seem to be non-locked up. Just peering, I don't know if this camera, okay, it'll see down through the holes. I can see a few things, like right, get my finger in the camera view, there's supposed to be a tube right there. There's not. There's a tube socket with a transistor sticking out of it. There's a resistor in another hole with a wire coming off of it. So somebody's has done a tube elimination there. Looks like all of the other tubes, with the exception of tube back behind this electrolytic capacitor, is missing, and it looks like there's a fair amount of dirt down in there. So let me get this thing extracted out of the cabinet, and we'll take a look-see at this and see how bad or how good it might be, because you know, few of the problems, a lot of this stuff can just be, it's bound up. You know, a lot of these controls haven't seen use in Lord knows how long. A lot of times cleaning goes a long way. The missing tube with the solid state parts, will definitely have to take care of that, and of course the missing tube, and test all the other tubes. Of course it's going to need the electrolytic capacitors replaced. You know, just basically completely give it a good once over, see what all it might need. But so let me get her extracted and we'll take a look and see how she looks. Oh my God, what did somebody do to this poor receiver? I don't even know where to start. Somebody took a tube type receiver and did one heck of a job at trying to turn this thing into a solid state receiver. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, oh, holy shit. And there's stuff to see on the top side too. It ain't good on the top, and it's horrible on the bottom. So let's just delve into it. And honestly, I'm going to tell the customer, find another one. You know, if this was mine, I've got two of them that work. One that belonged to my uncle that he built, and another one of them is in, the one I've inherited from my uncle is in mint condition. But yeah, even if I didn't own one, I might restore it, but man, this thing needs so much work. It's got so many problems, and most of the problems are modifications. You would literally have to go through this thing point to point, every single component, every wire, trace out everything, because there is a lot of stuff that would have to come out of this, because it did not come with one of these. So let's have a look-see. So at a distance, it doesn't look too bad. But then you look closer and you start seeing solid state parts everywhere in this thing. We start way over here. Remember, there was a we looked like there was a transistor in the top side. So for starters, we look right there. What the hell is that? Well, it's a 7808 voltage regulator tacked onto the back of the housing. If we zoom back out, and have a look-see over here, it is an absolute nightmare disaster. This entire area would just have to be redone. Everything in here. It just, yeah. I mean, normally change filter caps, you know, paper caps and your aluminum electrolytic caps. That's goes with anything old. Usually have to change some carbon composition resistors because they'll have drifted out of tolerance. But so much of what you see in here, it just ain't supposed to be here, or parts that are supposed to be in here are missing. Again, we have yet another 7808 regulator hanging out there, and what the hell is all of this stuff? It's like this everywhere in here. There's just parts bodged in, there's diodes, just stuff hanging off all over the place. I mean, yeah, what... we get back to where the rectifier tube is supposed to be. Now, quite honestly, this is not uncommon to see something like this in anything tube type. Especially back in the day when stuff was switching from tube type over to solid state. Components like diodes started to come down in price, and it got to the point where it was cheaper to buy rectifier diodes like this than it was to buy a vacuum tube. So a lot of repair shops, shops like my grandfather and uncle used to have, would do stuff like this. You know, do a better job, but but you know, it wasn't uncommon to switch from a rectifier vacuum tube over to diodes. But yeah, I mean, just the quality of the work that was done in this thing. Well, quality is not the right word to use. This just globbed on. It just, wow. I mean, this thing needs help. There are so many. It is, and there's more than one transistor up top. They've solid stated the first, what would that be? The first IF, or no, it'd be the first oscillator, the first mixer, trying to think that other tube, what's that one, like the second oscillator, I think? No, that's the second, not second oscillator, I think that other tube's the second mixer tube. Yeah, there's just, which would be right here. You can see there's parts, hanging leads, tacked into wires. It just, man, not good at all. Just what do I point to? Anywhere I put my finger, there's a problem. Just stuff, just... And then we have mechanical problems on top of that. Like I say, I have to check all these wafer switch sections to see if there's anything else broken here. You get down into the gear reduction mechanism down here. I'm going to need a flashlight for you to see down in there. I can see, but I don't think the camera look like it's seeing too good. I'll gently turn this, get to that right there, that ratcheting point. This gear right here is plastic, so that shaft and this gear right here and the small one here at the front, that's all one piece, that's plastic. You can see it deflect like this. It's just wobbling around in there, and that's why you hear that click. That's because it's skipping. This gear comes over too far, and eventually this gear just skips over the teeth on this one. Yeah, this thing's just, it just wobbles around horribly in there. Matter of fact, there's a lot of the stuff down in here. The shaft sections, there's a lot of play to a lot of the parts down in here. So, and I'll get her flipped over here in a second. But the problem with this is, if I owned this and I had to fix it for myself, that would be one thing. I'm not paying somebody to do it. You have to remember, I'm restoring this for a customer. How much would I couldn't even make an estimate. Yeah, there's really no way on something like this to even give an estimate. I can't even ballpark it, you know, what it would take, because I don't even know if their transformers possibly bad. I don't know what might have happened to this thing, you know. There was a failure why it eventually at some point got stopped being used. You know, there could be a transformer bad for all I know. Just having to redo all the stuff that's been modified in this, like I said, man, there's just, I can see parts tacked in. You know, There's a silver mica. Just, what the hell is this? You can see the globs of solder all over the blasted thing. I mean, man, somebody has been... they went to town on this poor thing. So, but that's the problem, though. As the owner, he has to pay me. You know, he sent me this radio, and for him to get it back, everything that needs to be done, he's got to pay for. Now, if it was his radio and he was fixing it himself, it might be worthwhile doing. You know, replacing all these parts, and then he has no labor costs. Because quite honestly, that's what the cost is of any repair. That is the biggest expense. That is 90+% of any repair bill is the labor. The parts are cheap, honestly. It's the labor that gets you, because it's very time consuming. And this, man, I have trouble visualizing how much labor it would take to restore this thing, unfortunately. If someone had only done, you know, like the rectifier tube elimination, turned that to solid state, and I don't even know, is this... These resistors... Because if they didn't put a dropping network on this rectifier circuit, that's another problem you have to watch out for, is when you take out a vacuum tube or even selenium rectifiers, that's another thing to be aware of. Early radios, now this one uses, like I say, vacuum tube rectifier, but even if it had a selenium rectifier, so that'd be one of those ones that has lots of plates, almost looks like a heat sink, okay, but basically that's what that is. But when you replace a vacuum tube or a selenium rectifier and you install silicon diodes in place of it, you're going to have a higher B+. So your main high voltage is going to be a lot higher. Well, maybe not a lot, but it's going to be considerably higher than it was with a tube or with the original selenium rectifier. Silicon diodes have a lot lower forward voltage. So, and you know, there's just basically less loss in it. So you end up with a higher voltage output. So you have to put resistors in there to basically absorb that, to lower the voltage back down to the operating range that whatever it is you're working on is specified to operate at. I'm not sure if that's what this block of parallel resistors is. Yeah. More capacitors I can see here. There's globs of solder down in here. I mean, just everywhere. So let me get this thing flipped over and you can take a look at the top, because it just doesn't look good on top either. Okay, so she's back right side up now, and if you've ever seen the inside of Heathkit MOHAWK RX-1 receiver before, there's at least one thing other than the missing tubes that should just jump out and smack you in the face. What the hell is that? I don't know how I missed that looking through the top cover, but yeah, as soon as I got the cover off of it, I saw that. That is a potentiometer. That is not supposed to be a potentiometer. What's supposed to be right there is one of those, a potato slicer, an air variable capacitor. What in God's name did somebody do here? And there's all kinds of parts. There's a little terminal strip down there with all kinds of parts on it. And that little thing with the green top, it looks like a transistor, but it's not. If I can get that in the camera, you can just barely see. It looks like it's the schematic symbol for a double diode there at the bottom of it there. First I thought, well, maybe it's a varactor diode, you know, which that would kind of maybe make halfway sense. You know, replacing an air variable capacitor maybe with a varactor diode circuit, because a varactor diode is just that. It's a variable capacitor that's just a diode that's capacitance is changed with a change in voltage. But yeah, I don't know. Tube socket right there. That I can see through the top cover. It has a transistor and a resistor with a bodged on wire just soldered into the socket. Into the sockets, the pin sockets. It's soldered in. So, you know, all that would have to be undone. And that is what is that? That's the first mixer, because yeah, this is the first oscillator, this is the first mixer. The first oscillator, there's no tube in there. More. 2 transistors and a diode. Again, all soldered into the pinholes. Second mixer. Come up here. There is yet another transistor soldered into a tube socket. Really? You know, if they were going to do that, why didn't they just solder the solid state parts on the bottom? You don't solder them in the sockets. I just want to strangle somebody when you see stuff like that. I mean, man, it just, the main air variable capacitor, or potato slicer here, okay? If I turn the tuning knob, you can see the gears moving there. That's not moving. That's because this isn't even attached. It's I guess that's one of the set screws, which would be that one there that's missing. That was one of the set screws that was bouncing around in the cabinet. Yeah, and a lot of these bushings, man, they're wobbled out. You know, the capacitor's fine. It turns, but yeah, like I say, there's so many shaft bushings that are slightly ovaled out. God, you'd have to replace a couple of those bushings. There's a lot of mechanical work here that needs to be done. Of course, the rectifier tube's missing. We saw the diodes on the underside. So, yeah, like I say, nothing can't be fixed. But man, this is one of those ones where I think the customer would be better off getting another one if he really wants one. Yeah, you know, he's already bought this. He's stuck with this one. Now, he could try to sell this to somebody else for a parts chassis, or if somebody wanted to restore this themselves, where they're not paying somebody. You know, he could buy another one, keep this for a parts chassis, but it would be cheaper. If you look at how much money he's probably would have in putting this back to good working order, versus buying another one that needs to be restored and having me restore that would still probably be cheaper than fixing this one, because this one just has so much stuff. If it wasn't for all of this other BS in this thing, yeah, this would be worthwhile fixing. You know, dealing with the mechanical problems in the front end, the gear reduction for all the drives and everything, that's one thing, but add in on top of that all of this stuff that's been modified in here, yeah, it's going to be just way too much money. So yeah, the video's probably going to end, you know, the end of this, that'll be it for this receiver, I'm going to assume. You know, I can't see the customer just giving me a blank check to restore this, because honestly, I'm going to tell him it's not worth it. You know, if you want to fix it yourself, which, you know, obviously he can't, that's why he sends stuff to me to restore, but yeah, it's not worth it. It's just going to be way too much money to have to pay somebody to fix this. Yeah. It's a shame, just a crying shame. Oh, one other thing while we're up here. Most people probably have never seen, since we're here, and I see that's still in here, that's a crystal in a tube socket. In a glass envelope, just in case you've never... Whew, oh, that's tight. That is 100 kilohertz. Where is it? Yeah, right there. See it on the glass, it says 100 kilocycles. That is a crystal. That is a 100 kilohertz oscillator crystal in a vacuum tube package. So, at least this video wasn't completely worthless. At least if you've never seen a crystal in a vacuum tube package, you have now. So, yeah, man, it's a crying shame. Somebody did this to this poor thing. I mean... So, in any case, there you go. There is a totally hacked up, you know, Heathkit Mohawk. So, maybe if he can find somebody that has, or even if he can find another one that needs to be restored that has cosmetic damage. So if he can find one that has a cabinet that somebody used for a step stool, or you dropped a brick on the blasted thing and crushed the cabinet, if he could find one that needs a cabinet, but electronically it's still original. You know, it's going to need to be restored. That's fine. You have to do that to any of them. But as long as it's, you know, fairly original, it just doesn't have all of these modifications. then you could use this one for a parts chassis. You could use the cabinet off of this one. Even the faceplate's not that, like I say, it looks really nice with the exception of this one little corner. And since it's aluminum, it's not like it's going to rust. If you just left it bare, you don't really notice it unless you're really looking down at that corner. Even the faceplate's nice. The knobs are in pretty good condition. I mean, it's obviously been stored in a slightly damp environment. There is some pitting there, but they don't look that bad. So, you know, there's lots of good parts here. It's just, yeah, money-wise, man, there's better ways to spend your money. I hate to say, you know, and I hate doing that because I restore radios for a living. But, yeah, this one, just financially, it's not going to be practical for the customer. Find another one, restore it, and you'll have less money in it than trying to fix this one. You know, I'm going to turn the camera off and go cry now. That's what the radios like this do to me. It's just sad.